Evans didn't die from bullets. I need you to understand that before I tell you what really happened in Fallujah. My hands are shaking as I type this, not from fear anymore, but from rage. Rage that they covered it up. Rage that 3 good men are dead, and their families will never know why. November 14th, 2003. 4 Rangers went into a cave. 3 came out. And what came out with us? God help me, it's still out there. But here's what they don't want you to know. We weren't the first team they sent. And we definitely weren't the last. My name is Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole. I served 3 tours in Iraq with the 75th Ranger Regiment. I've cleared buildings in Ramadi where every doorway could be your last. I've walked through streets in Baghdad where snipers turned windows into execution chambers. I've pulled friends out of burning Humvees while RPGs screamed overhead. But nothing prepared me for what we found 60 clicks outside Fallujah. It started 3 days before the mission. I was cleaning my rifle in the FOB when Specialist Ramirez from 2nd Platoon sat down next to me. Guy looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. "Cole," he said quietly, "you hear about Mitchell's team?" Mitchell ran recon for 1st Battalion. Solid operator, 15 years in. "They got hit?" Ramirez shook his head. "They got something. Whole team came back from a cave sweep 2 nights ago. Now 3 of them are in the psych ward, sedated. The 4th Rodriguez, he won't stop drawing these symbols all over his arms with a pen. Medical had to restrain him. PTSD hits different people different ways," I said, but Ramirez grabbed my arm. "Rodriguez keeps saying the same thing over and over." It looked at me, and I saw nothing. "What the hell does that mean?" Before I could answer, 1st Sergeant Hayes appeared. "Ramirez, you're done here. Cole, Captain wants you. Now." The way Ramirez looked at me as MPs escorted him away, I'll never forget it. Pure terror. Captain Miller's tent was different this time. Blackout curtains over everything. 2 guards outside who weren't from our unit. Inside, Miller stood next to a laptop with 3 men I'd never seen clean-shaven, civilian clothes. But they moved like operators. Special Activities Division, maybe CIA. The intel photos on Miller's screen showed a cave entrance near the Syrian border. But these weren't standard recon photos. These were thermal images, and something was wrong with them. The cave showed hot, not warm like bodies or equipment, but hot like a reactor core. The heat signature pulsed in the images, expanding and contracting like breathing. "Thermal imaging picked up these signatures 48 hours ago," Miller said, not meeting our eyes. "Could be a weapons cache, could be insurgents, could be..." He stopped mid-sentence, jaw clenching. One of the civilians, a thin man with dead eyes, spoke up. "Could be a chemical weapons lab. Saddam's people had facilities out here we never found." Bullshit. I knew bullshit when I heard it, and Miller knew I knew. His hands were shaking slightly as he clicked through the images. "Could be what, sir?" I pressed. "Just be careful, Cole. ROE is observe and report only. Do not engage unless fired upon. And Cole," he finally looked at me, "minimum exposure. You get in, you assess, you get out. 5 minutes max inside that cave." That should have been my first warning. Rangers don't do observe and report. We're door kickers, not scouts. "But orders are orders." "Sir, what happened to Mitchell's team?" The room went silent. One of the civilians started to speak, but Miller cut him off. "Mitchell's team encountered insurgents. Chemical exposure. They're being treated." "Then why not send CBRN specialists?" "Because we need shooters," the thin civilian said, "in case the insurgents are still there." More bullshit. But you don't argue with spooks. Your team ships out at 2,200. Take. Standard loadout plus chemical detection equipment. And Sergeant, this mission is classified beyond your current clearance. You report to me and only me. The team, I had 3 hours to prep my team. 3 men I'd trust with my life. Hell, I already had, multiple times. Corporal Javier Javi Diaz handled our comms. 23 years old, from Chicago's South Side, with a gift for electronics that bordered on supernatural. Kid could fix a radio with duct tape and spite. He'd grown up in gang territory, lost his brother to a drive-by, and joined up to escape. Always cracking jokes to cut the tension, but when things got real, he was ice-cold professional. I'd seen him call in air support while taking fire, voice steady as a surgeon's hand. Specialist Marcus Tank Miller, no relation to the captain, carried our M240B machine gun like it weighed nothing. Montana farm boy, 6'4", built like a brick wall. His family had been raising cattle for 5 generations. Never said much, but when he did, you listened. Guy had instincts like a wolf. He could smell an ambush before it happened. Saved our asses in Tikrit when he spotted disturbed dirt that turned out to be a daisy chain of IEDs. And Private First Class Ethan Evans, 19, fresh from Ranger School, still had that new guy shine. Smart as hell, though, MIT dropout who joined up after 9/11. Engineering prodigy who gave up a full scholarship because he wanted to make a difference. Could calculate blast radius and structural weakness in his head. Christ, he was just a kid, but a kid who'd already proven himself under fire twice. I gathered them in our hooch, away from prying ears. Something's fucked about this mission, I told them straight. Mitchell's team went into a cave 2 days ago, came back broken. Now we're going to the same AO. Tank's expression darkened. I heard Rodriguez tried to claw his own eyes out. Where'd you hear that? Medical corpsman owes me. Said Rodriguez kept screaming about the angles being wrong. Said the walls were breathing. Evans pulled out a notebook. Kid documented everything. Sarge, I've been tracking unusual mission reports. 17 teams in the last 6 months assigned to investigate thermal anomalies. Only 3 came back intact. How do you know this? I've got a friend in S2. Pattern's always the same: cave systems, unusual heat signatures, teams come back with psychological trauma, or don't come back at all. Avi looked at his comm equipment. My cousin in 2nd Marines mentioned something similar in Afghanistan. Whole squad went into a cave system near Tora Bora. Found them 3 days later, catatonic. Military blamed it on gas exposure, but my cousin said their eyes. Said it looked like something had been burned out from the inside. We all exchanged glances. This was bigger than just one bad mission. We go in ready for anything, I decided. Full MOPP gear accessible, extra ammunition, and Evans, bring every detection device you can carry. If this goes sideways, we protect each other first, mission second. Tank nodded slowly. Hooah, Sarge. We rolled out at 2,200 hours in a single Humvee, blacked out, no convoy. That alone was unusual. Rangers don't travel alone in hostile territory. The route took us through dead zones, areas where even insurgents didn't go. The desert out here was different, older somehow. You could feel the weight of history pressing down. Your NVGs turn everything this sick green color that makes familiar shapes look wrong. Every shadow could hide death. But this darkness felt different. 2 hours in, Javi tried to raise base for a routine check. Base, this is Dagger 2-1. How copy? Static. Not unusual, the terrain out there played hell with signals. But Javi frowned, adjusting frequencies. That's weird, he muttered. I'm getting interference. But it's not random. It's patterned. Like something's broadcasting on all channels. Simultaneously, he handed me his headset. The static had a rhythm to it, a pulse that matched my heartbeat, then gradually sped up, forcing my own pulse to follow. I yanked the headset off. Turn it off. Sarge, all comms, off, now. Tank shifted in the gunner's turret. Movement, 2 o'clock. We all tensed, weapons ready, but through the NVGs I saw nothing. Just empty desert. Where? Gone now. But Sarge, it was tall. Too tall for a person, and it didn't move right, like it was skipping frames. Evans checked his instruments. Electromagnetic readings are off the charts. Something's generating a massive field out here. The temperature gauge on the Humvee started climbing, even though the desert night was cold. The engine coughed, sputtered. We were still 10 clicks from the objective. We walk from here, I decided. We ditched the vehicle in a wadi and moved on foot. The cliff face loomed ahead. a massive limestone wall rising out of the desert like a tombstone. But as we got closer, I realized it wasn't natural limestone. The rock was black, volcanic, but this region had no volcanic activity. It was like someone had transplanted a piece of mountain from somewhere else. That's when I felt it. A vibration in the ground, subtle but constant, like standing near a massive subwoofer playing a note too low to hear. "You feel that?" Evans whispered, kneeling to touch the ground. "The frequency is about 19 hertzes, just below human hearing, but right at the frequency that causes fear responses. Someone's using infrasound." We all felt it. Tank had his hand on the ground, expression grim. "It's coming from inside." And Sarge, "The ground's warm. In the middle of the desert night, the ground's warm." The smell hit us next, sharp, metallic, with something sweet underneath, like copper pennies mixed with rotting fruit. But there was another scent: ozone, like the air before a lightning strike. "Masks?" Javi suggested, already reaching for his MOPP gear. "No," I decided. "We need to smell if there's gas or chemicals, but keep them ready." Bad call, but I didn't know that yet. The cave entrance was wrong. The photos showed a rough opening, but this was smooth, too smooth. The rock had been melted and reformed, creating a perfect arch 15 feet high, 10 wide. The surface was like black glass, and our lights reflected off it in impossible ways. Sometimes the beam would split into colors that shouldn't exist, purple greens and yellow reds that made your eyes water. Strange symbols covered the entrance walls, carved deep into the stone. Not Arabic, not ancient Sumerian, I'd seen both. These were mathematical, geometric patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Fibonacci spirals that terminated in sharp angles that hurt to process. Evans called softly, his voice tight. "Look at this." He was kneeling by something half buried in sand. An AK-47 still had a magazine in it, but the metal was wrong, not rusted but transformed. It looked crystallized, like the iron had been restructured at a molecular level. Next to it, a human rib cage, but the bones weren't white. They were that same black volcanic glass, with hairline cracks that glowed faintly blue-green. "How long's this been here?" Javi asked, reaching out to touch it. "Don't!" Evans grabbed his hand. "It's radioactive, not uranium, something else. The molecular structure has been completely altered." Tank found more bones scattered around the entrance. Some were human, others weren't. Too many joints, vertebrae that spiraled instead of stacked. "Sarge, we've got multiple KIA here, different time periods." Evans examined the remains with his instruments. "This one's recent, maybe 2 weeks. But this one," he pointed to a skull that was half melted into the rock. "Carbon dating would put it at centuries old, but that's impossible. The decay patterns are all wrong." The vibration was getting stronger. I could feel it in my teeth now, my bones humming like tuning forks. My vision started to blur at the edges. "We go in quick." I decided, though every instinct screamed to run. 5-minute sweep, then out. "Tank, you're on point. Evans, stay close to me. Javi, try to mark our path. I don't trust this place not to change behind us." Javi pulled out his infrared chem lights, but when he cracked one, instead of the familiar red glow, it burned white hot and disintegrated in his hand. "What the fuck?" "Accelerated oxidation," Evans muttered. "Something's affecting chemical reactions. Our ammunition might not work properly." Tank checked his M240B. Only one way to find out. 5 minutes, I repeated, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "That's all." As we approached the entrance, our radios, which we turned off, suddenly screamed to life. Not static, but voices. Hundreds of voices, all speaking different languages, all saying the same thing when translated: "Don't wake it up." Then silence. Even the desert wind stopped. "Fuck this," Tank said, and Tank never swore. "Something's wrong, Sarge. This is a tomb, not a cave." He was right. Every instinct I had was screaming to leave. But we were rangers, We don't quit. 5 minutes, I said again, though the words felt like a lie. We entered the cave. The descent. Our helmet lights cut through darkness so thick it felt solid. The beam only penetrated about 10 feet before being swallowed completely. The tunnel sloped down at a sharp angle exactly 19 degrees, Evans noted, the same as the infrasound frequency. The walls were that same black glass, but covered in more symbols. As we moved deeper, they started to glow. Faint at first, a sick blue-green phosphorescence that pulsed in rhythm with that underground vibration. But when I looked directly at them, they were just carved stone. It was only in peripheral vision that they moved, crawled, rearranged themselves into patterns that almost made sense. This isn't natural, Evans breathed. This is manufactured. But the engineering, it's beyond anything we have. The walls are one solid piece, no joints, no seams. It's like it was grown, not built. 20 meters in, Javi grabbed my shoulder. Sarge, look back. The entrance was gone. Not blocked, gone. Just more tunnels stretching back into darkness. That's impossible, I said. But even as I said it, I knew impossible didn't apply here. We marked the path, Javi said, voice shaking. The IR markers are gone too. Tank turned his weapon backward, finger on the trigger. We're being herded. The tunnel began to widen, and we started finding things. Equipment from different eras, an M1 Garand from World War II, a British Enfield, a Soviet RPG, modern M4 carbines, all crystallized like the AK outside, all surrounded by those glass bones. Jesus, Javi whispered. How many teams have they sent here? Evans was scanning everything with his instruments, face pale. Sarge, the radiation readings. Each body is from a different time, but they all died at the same moment. Same cellular crystallization pattern, same molecular timestamp. These people died simultaneously, even though they entered decades apart. That's not possible. Nothing here is possible. Evans's composure finally cracked. The physics are wrong. Light bends differently, chemistry doesn't work right, and time isn't linear here. The tunnel opened into a chamber. Jesus Christ, that chamber. It was massive. Our lights couldn't find the ceiling or far walls. The floor was polished black stone, so perfectly flat it was like walking on liquid. Our reflections stared back at us, but they were wrong. Delayed by half a second, movements not quite matching. In the center sat a raised platform, carved from a single block of that black stone. The symbols here were different, larger, more complex, and they definitely moved. They flowed like liquid mercury under glass, forming patterns that made my head split with pain if I tried to follow them. But it was what stood around the platform that made us freeze. 7 figures, human shape but wrong. They wore uniforms from different eras, U.S., military, Soviet, something that might have been Ottoman. But they weren't bodies. They were transformed, crystallized like the bones, but standing, frozen mid-step, weapons raised, faces twisted in expressions of absolute terror. My God, Javi breathed. They're not dead. Look at the eyes. He was right. The eyes moved, tracked us. Tears of that blue-green light leaked from them. Tank raised his weapon. We need to leave, now. But Evans was transfixed, moving toward the platform. There's something underneath. The energy readings are off the scale. The platform wasn't solid. It was a lid. A massive stone lid covered in those flowing symbols. And from the seams, that blue-green light pulsed stronger. The smell was overwhelming here, ozone and decay and something else, something alien. Don't touch it, I ordered, but Evans was already running his hands over the symbols. It's warm, and there's a pattern, it's mathematical, a sequence. If I can just... The symbols under his hands flared bright white. A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber, and the lid cracked. Not all the way, just an inch, but from that crack came absolute darkness. Not the absence of light, the negation of it. Then the darkness looked back. 2 points of light appeared in that crack. Not reflected light, these were generating their own cold, white glow. They moved, tracked us, focused with an intelligence that was vast and utterly inhuman. The lid started sliding open with a sound like continents shifting. "Move!" I screamed, but Evans was frozen, hands still on the stone, his whole body rigid. What emerged from that stone box still visits me every time I close my eyes. It was tall, 7, maybe 8 feet, but its height kept changing, like reality couldn't decide how big it should be. One moment it towered over us, the next it was human-sized, but the terror remained constant. Its body was wrong in every way. Too thin, like someone had stretched a human shape like taffy, but also too dense, like it had too much mass crammed into not enough space. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, with dark veins visible underneath veins that didn't follow any anatomy I knew. They formed patterns, symbols like the ones on the walls, and they moved, rearranged, told stories in a language that predated speech. But the worst part was how it moved. Its joints bent in too many places, arms folding backward and forward simultaneously, existing in multiple positions at once. When it walked, it didn't step, it stuttered forward, like reality was a film reel and someone was cutting out frames. It had no face, just smooth, stretched skin where features should be. Except for those eyes, 2 points of white light that weren't eyes at all. They were holes. Gaps in reality that showed something else behind them, something vast and cold and infinitely hostile. Tank opened fire immediately. The M240B roared, muzzle flash strobing the chamber. Every round hit, I saw them impact, saw the thing's body ripple. But the bullets just weren't. They existed, then they didn't. No ricochets, no absorption. They were just edited out of reality. The thing tilted its head, a motion that involved too many angles, and looked at Tank. Really looked at him. Tank's scream cut off mid-breath. His skin started cracking like dried mud, dark lines spreading from his eyes and mouth. The cracks spread in perfect mathematical spirals, Fibonacci sequences written in breaking flesh. He dropped the machine gun, clawing at his face, and I saw, God help me, I saw light coming from inside those cracks. The same blue-green as the symbols, but also something else. I saw Tank's soul, for lack of a better word, being pulled apart, unraveled like a sweater. "Tank!" I rushed toward him, but Javi grabbed me. "He's gone, look!" Tank's body was changing. His skin became translucent, showing the bones underneath. But the bones were wrong now, twisted into spiral patterns, restructured into that same black glass, glowing from within. His skeleton rearranged itself into geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were gone. In their place, more of those white holes, showing that vast, cold space beyond. Then he shattered. Like safety glass hit with a hammer, he just came apart into a million glowing pieces that dissolved before they hit the ground. Not even dust remained. Tank, 6'4", 250 pounds of solid muscle, the strongest man I'd ever known, was just gone. Unmade, edited out of existence like he'd never been. The thing stepped off the platform, and reality rippled around it. The crystallized soldiers began to move, joints cracking, heads turning to follow its movement. They were still aware, still trapped in those transformed bodies, and their eyes begged us to run. Each footstep made no sound, but I felt them vibrations that went straight through my boots, into my bones, each one rewriting something fundamental in my cells. The air around it was wrong. Physics broke down in its proximity. Light bent toward it, then away, then ceased to exist entirely in patches. Evans was still frozen at the platform, hands locked onto the stone, his whole body rigid. His eyes had rolled back, showing only white, and his mouth was open in a silent scream. Black cracks were starting to form on his hands where they touched the symbols. "Let him go!" I raised my rifle, dumping a full mag into the thing's center mass. Might as well have been shooting at the concept of fear itself. The rounds just stopped existing the moment they reached it. The thing moved, not walked, but existed in a new location next to Bro Evans. It reached out with one of those impossible arms, fingers that had too many joints and not enough at the same time, and touched his shoulder. The effect was immediate. Evans's body went rigid, then began to change. His skin became transparent, showing his skeleton, his organs. But they were all wrong. His heart was crystallizing, turning to that black glass, still beating, but each pulse sent cracks spreading through his chest. His bones twisted, reformed, tried to match the thing's impossible geometry. "No!" I screamed, rushing forward, but the thing looked at me. Being seen by it was like being unmade. I felt my memory start to fray, my sense of self dissolving. I saw myself from outside, saw all my possible futures and pasts, saw the moment of my birth and death simultaneously. I understood for one terrible moment that we were nothing, less than nothing. We were errors in its reality that needed correcting. Javi saved me, tackled me aside, breaking its line of sight. "Don't look at it! Don't let it see you!" Evans started to glow from within, that blue-green light leaking from the spreading cracks. His mouth moved, trying to speak, and I heard his voice, but it came from everywhere and nowhere. "It's so old, Sarge, so old." And we woke it up. We woke them all up. Then, like Tank, he came apart, but slower. I watched his molecular structure fail, watched him dissolve layer by layer, skin, then muscle, then bone, each part crystallizing and shattering in sequence. He didn't die, he was unwritten, deleted from reality line by line. 19 years old, an MIT genius who wanted to save the world. Gone. "Run," I said, then louder. "Run." We bolted for where we thought the tunnel had been, but the chamber had changed. Where there had been one entrance, now there were dozens, all identical, all leading into darkness. Behind us came a sound I'll never forget, like breathing, but wet and mechanical, like something that had forgotten how to be alive, trying to remember by copying us. Each breath was different, experimenting, learning. "Which way?" Javi screamed. I grabbed an IR flare, fucked the malfunction risk, and threw it down the nearest tunnel. It burned normally for 2 seconds, then accelerated, aging decades in moments before crumbling to dust. Not that one. The thing was moving toward us, not hurrying. It didn't need to. Reality bent around it, distances becoming meaningless. One step covered inches, the next covered yards. The crystallized soldiers were moving too, shambling toward us with jerky, stop-motion movements. Their mouths opened and closed, and I could hear them trying to scream through transformed vocal cords that produced only harmonics of that underground hum. We picked a tunnel at random and ran. The passage immediately felt wrong. It angled up when it should have gone down. Gravity pulled from the wrong direction. We were running on what should have been the wall, but it felt like the floor. Behind us, that wet breathing got closer, but now there were words in it, or attempts at words. It was trying to speak, using Tank's voice, then Evans's, mixing them together into something that sounded like both and neither. "Sergeant, wait. Sarge, stop. It hurts. We're still here. We're all still here." "Don't listen," Javi shouted. "It's not them." But what if it was? What if some part of them was trapped in that thing, conscious and suffering? The tunnel split. Split again. We were in a maze that hadn't existed when we entered. The symbols on the walls were moving faster now, almost frantically, like they were excited, like they were celebrating. My compass spun wildly. Evans's instruments were going haywire, sparking and smoking. The air was getting thicker, harder to breathe, tasting of copper and ozone and something else time. It tasted like time rotting. "Dead end!" Javi skidded to a stop. The tunnel terminated in a smooth wall covered in those symbols. But these were different. Older. They hurt to look at, made my eyes water blood. The breathing was right behind us. I turned, rifle raised, and saw it at the end of the tunnel. But it wasn't alone. There were others now, emerging from the walls themselves. All different but fundamentally the same, tall, impossible, wrong. Some had multiple arms, some had none. Some flickered between existing and not existing. All had those white holes for eyes. "Sarge," Javi said quietly, I'm sorry. Before I could ask what he meant, he shoved something into my hand, his lucky coin, the one his brother had given him before he died, and charged toward the things. Javi, no! He pulled every grenade he had, holding them tight. Tell my family I love them. The explosion should have killed him instantly, should have brought the tunnel down. But the things caught the blast, absorbed it, played with it. I watched the explosion happen in slow motion, reversed, happening again. I watched Javi die 100 times in 100 different ways, each one saved and replayed by those things like they were learning what death meant. But his sacrifice worked. The wall behind us cracked from the pressure wave. Not much, but enough. I could see light, real light, starlight through the gap. I emptied my rifle into the crack, widening it, then squeezed through. The edges tore at my gear, my skin, but I pushed forward, driven by pure terror and the need to make Javi's death mean something. The surface. I exploded from a completely different part of the cliff face, a mile from where we'd entered. The desert had never looked so beautiful. The stars had never seemed so right, but I could still hear it. Them, underground, moving, searching. The whole cliff face was glowing now, that blue-green pulse visible through the rock like veins under skin. I ran until my legs gave out, then crawled, then ran again. Found the Humvee by pure luck or divine intervention. The engine started on the by, third try, coughing black smoke. In the rearview mirror, I saw them emerge. Not from the cave, from the cliff itself, passing through solid rock like it wasn't there. A dozen of them, maybe more, standing in the desert, watching me flee. They didn't pursue, they just watched, and I knew with horrible certainty that they were memorizing me. That I was marked. The Humvee died 5 clicks from base. I walked the rest, dawn breaking over the desert, each shadow looking like them. By the time the perimeter guards spotted me, I was delirious, dehydrated, talking to Tank and Evans and Javi like they were still there. When I woke up, I was in a concrete room with no windows. Captain Miller was there with 5 men in black suits, different ones from before. These had the dead-eyed look of people who'd seen what I'd seen and were still functioning. Report, one of them said. Not asked, ordered. I told them everything, every detail. I showed them the helmet cam footage I'd managed to save, corrupted, full of static, but you could see glimpses. The chamber, the things, my men dying. The suit watched it without expression. When it was over, he turned to Miller. Full containment protocol. Seal the site. What about my men? I demanded. Their families, KIA via IED, the suit said flatly. Bodies recovered, closed casket funerals, full honors. That's not what happened. That's what happened, Sergeant. Tank Miller, Ethan Evans, and Javier Diaz died serving their country. Their sacrifice will be honored appropriately. You knew, I said, realization dawning. You knew what was in there. You've been feeding teams to those things. The suit didn't deny it. Since 1958, sometimes they sleep for years. Sometimes they wake up hungry. What they are, where they came from, what they want. What do they want? He looked at me with those dead eyes. To go home. But their home doesn't exist in our reality. So they're trying to change our reality to match theirs, one person at a time. They kept me isolated for 3 weeks. Daily interrogations, medical tests, psychological evaluations. They showed me photos, dozens of similar sites around the world. The pattern was always the same. Ancient locations, impossible architecture, teams going in and not coming out whole. How many? I asked. How many have you fed to them? Acceptable losses was the only answer. They made me watch videos of other encounters. Helmet cam footage from teams in Afghanistan, Peru, Cambodia. Always the same, the things emerging, reality breaking down, soldiers transformed or unmade. In one video from 1971, I saw a Marine transform into one of them, his body stretching and distorting until he matched their impossible proportions. He was still conscious, still screaming, when the video cut out. Sometimes they take them, the suit explained clinically. Sometimes they change them, sometimes they just unmake them. We haven't found a pattern. Why keep sending teams? Because one day, we might find their weakness. One day, we might understand enough to fight back. Fight back against what? He showed me satellite imagery from around the world. 17 sites, all glowing with that blue-green light. But more appearing every year, a cancer spreading across the globe. They're waking up, all of them. Whatever kept them dormant is failing. They showed me documents to sign NDAs that basically said, if I ever spoke about this, I'd disappear. Not be killed, disappear. Unmade from records, from memory, from existence. We can do that now, the suit said. We learned it from them. I signed. What choice did I have? The official report was clean. IED attack, 3 KIA, 1 survivor. I got a silver star for heroism under fire. Tank, Evans, and Javi got posthumous bronze stars. Their families got folded flags and lies. I attended all. 3 funerals. Tank's family in Montana, stoic farmers who aged a decade when they got the news. His father shook my hand and said, "He spoke highly of you, Sergeant, said you were the best leader he'd served under." I wanted to tell him the truth. Tell him his son died bravely, but not how they said. But I just nodded and said Tank was a hero. Evans's parents in Boston, his mother a professor, his father an engineer. They showed me his room, still full of MIT textbooks and Army recruitment posters. He wanted to make a difference, his mother said through tears. Did he? Did his death mean something? I lied and said yes. Javi's family in Chicago was the hardest. His sister Maria, raising his nephew alone, just stared at me with eyes that knew I was lying. How did he really die? She asked when we were alone. Saving me, I said, the only truth I could give. She nodded, handed me a box. He wrote about you, said if anything happened to give you this. Inside were his notebooks. Pages and pages of him trying to make sense of the patterns, the sights, the things we'd encountered. He'd been researching for months, connecting dots I hadn't seen. And at the end, a note, Sarge, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're not. That means my theory was right, they can't take everyone. Some of us are incompatible with their reality. You're one of them. Use that. Find others. Fight back. Javi. I was medically discharged 2 months later. Psychological trauma, my papers said. Full pension, full benefits, and a monthly visit from men in suits to make sure I was adjusting well. But I couldn't let it go. Javi's notebooks became my obsession. He'd identified patterns the military missed or ignored. The sites weren't random, they formed a grid, a network. Ancient civilizations had built on these spots, not by accident, but as warnings. Pyramids, temples, monuments, all saying, do not dig here. Watched, always followed, but they let me look. Maybe they wanted someone on the outside investigating. Maybe they'd given up trying to understand. In Peru, I found cave paintings that showed them tall figures with impossible geometries, emerging from cracks in reality. The local shaman, when I showed him photos from Iraq, went pale. Los Antiguos, he whispered, the old ones. They sleep until foolish men wake them. In Cambodia, monks at a temple told me about the spaces between dimensions that overlapped with ours at certain points. They said prayers every day to keep those spaces closed. Had been for 1,000 years, but the prayers were failing. In Egypt, I met an archaeologist who'd lost his team to a site in the Valley of the Kings. He showed me hieroglyphs that had been deliberately destroyed, chiseled out of existence. The pharaohs knew, he said. They built their tombs near the sites to guard them, to warn others, but we didn't listen. Each piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. We'd found something that was never meant to be found. Open doors that were meant to stay closed. 5 years after Fallujah, I'd mapped out the network. 17 confirmed sites, but Javi's notes suggested there were hundreds, maybe thousands. All connected by ley lines, electromagnetic fields, something we didn't have words for. But more importantly, I'd found others like me. Survivors. People who'd encountered them and lived, marked but not taken. We started meeting in secret, comparing notes, sharing intel. There was Captain Sarah Chen, Air Force, who'd lost her squadron to a site in Alaska. The entire inside of a mountain had been carved into those symbols. Her team had flown in and never flown out. She'd survived because she'd stayed with the aircraft, but she'd watched through the cockpit as her team was transformed into crystalline statues. Master Sergeant James Thompson, Marines, who'd cleared a cave in Afghanistan where the walls bled that blue-green light. His squad had been unmade one by one, but he'd survived by closing his eyes and walking backward out of the cave, guided only by touch and memory. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, civilian contractor, who'd been part of a research team studying the electromagnetic anomalies. She'd watched her colleagues be absorbed into the walls of a facility in Nevada, their consciousness uploaded into whatever network the things were building. We compared symptoms, we all heard the humming, we all saw them in our peripheral vision. We all had the same crystalline cracks appearing on our bodies, spreading slowly. "We're infected, Doctor," Warren concluded, "or inoculated. Our exposure changed us, but not enough to transform us completely. We're stuck between their reality and ours." 5 years after Fallujah, the activity increased exponentially. Teams were being lost weekly. The cover-ups were getting sloppy. Civilians were starting to notice. I was in New Mexico when it happened, visiting a site the indigenous peoples called the Wound. Just observing, taking readings with equipment Dr. Warren had modified. The ground started humming. Not the subtle vibration I'd grown used to, but a full-throated roar that shook the earth. The symbols on the rocks didn't just glow, they burned, white-hot, searing themselves into my retinas. And they emerged. Not one or two, but dozens. They crawled out of the solid rock like it was water, their impossible bodies flickering between dimensions. But these were different, more solid, more real, more here. They were adapting to our reality. I ran, but they didn't pursue. They just stood there, dozens of them, heads tilted toward the sky, waiting. That night, 17 sites around the world activated simultaneously. The aurora borealis appeared over Iraq, Peru, Cambodia, places it had no business being. Electromagnetic interference shut down communications globally for 3 minutes. When it came back, the reports started flooding in. Military teams, research stations, civilian populations near the sites. A week after the global activation, I got a visit. Not from the usual suits, but from something else. I woke up at 3 a.m. to find one of them standing in my bedroom. Not threatening, just there, watching. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. It reached out with one of those impossible hands and touched my forehead. The vision that followed broke my mind and rebuilt it. I saw their home, a dimension where physics worked differently, where consciousness and matter were the same thing, where time flowed in all directions at once. It was beautiful and terrible and completely incompatible with our reality. They weren't invaders, they were refugees. Their dimension was collapsing, had been for eons. They'd been sleeping in our reality, waiting for their home to stabilize. But it never did. And now they were waking up to find themselves trapped in a reality that hurt them to exist in. Every human they transformed, they were trying to save, to convert into something that could survive the merger of dimensions they were planning. But human consciousness couldn't handle the transformation. We broke, we died, we became nothing. They didn't understand death. In their reality, consciousness was eternal, infinitely malleable. Our fragility confused and frustrated them. The vision ended and the thing was gone. But the message was clear. They were going to merge our realities, whether we survived it or not. It's 2023 now, 20 years since Fallujah. The sites have expanded from 17 to over 300 confirmed. Governments have given up trying to contain them. The cover-ups have failed. Everyone knows something is happening, even if they don't know what. The transformations are accelerating. Entire towns near the sites have been evacuated after residents started showing the crystalline cracks. The military has a name for it now. Dimensional Dissolution Syndrome, DDS. As if naming it makes it less terrifying. I'm dying. The cracks cover 60% of my body now. Soon I'll either transform completely or shatter like Tank and Evans did. Dr. Warren thinks we might have a choice, that those of us who've been marked can choose our fate when the time comes. But that's not why I'm writing this. I'm writing because last week I intercepted military communications. They're sending another team to the Fallujah site. Fresh Rangers, just like we were. They're calling it a reconnaissance in force. They're not going to find a cave. The site has expanded. Satellite imagery shows the entire cliff face has transformed into that black glass. The symbols are visible from space, and at night it glows so bright you can see it from Baghdad. The things aren't hiding in caves anymore. They're building, creating structures that shouldn't exist, that hurt to perceive, preparing for something. I've tried to warn them, sent messages, leaked intel, even broke into a briefing, but they're not listening. They think they can fight them with conventional weapons. They think they understand. They don't understand shit. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, either transformed or dead or something in between. But you need to know what's coming. The merger is beginning. Reality is breaking down at the quantum level. Physics is becoming unreliable. Mathematics is failing. The fundamental constants of the universe are shifting. In places near the sites, people are reporting impossible things. Water flowing uphill, shadows moving independently of their sources. Time loops where the same minute repeats endlessly. Children are being born with the crystalline cracks already formed. Animals are transforming, becoming geometric impossibilities that still somehow live. The governments of the world know. They're not trying to stop it anymore, they're trying to control who survives. Underground bunkers won't help, nuclear weapons won't help, prayer won't help. The only thing that might help is understanding. The things we need to stop calling them, that the entities, they're not evil. They're desperate. They're trying to save themselves and, in their alien way, trying to save us too. But their salvation is our destruction. Unless we can find a middle ground, unless we can communicate properly, unless we can find a way for both realities to coexist. Javi was right, some of us are incompatible with their reality. We're anchors, holding our dimension stable. If enough of us resist the transformation, we might be able to prevent the complete merger. Create a barrier between dimensions. But it means sacrifice. It means choosing to shatter rather than transform, to cease completely rather than become something else. Tank and Evans and Javi, they didn't just die. They held the line. Their dissolution created temporary stability in local space-time. That's why I survived. Their sacrifice literally held reality together long enough for me to escape. Every soldier who's died at these sites, every person who's shattered instead of transformed, they're heroes in a war they didn't know they were fighting. A war for the fundamental nature of reality itself. I need to tell you the real truth about what happened in that cave. The thing I've never told anyone, not even the other survivors. When Evans was being transformed, when he was connected to that thing, he didn't just die, he merged with it for a moment. And in that moment, he understood everything. He saw their history, their tragedy, their desperate plan, and he made a choice. He could have survived the transformation. I saw it in his eyes the moment when he could have let go and become like them. But he chose to shatter instead, to break apart rather than become a bridge between dimensions. Someone has to remember us as we were, he said, though his mouth didn't move. The words appeared in my mind, clear as day. Someone has to carry the truth. That someone was me. Tank knew too. When that thing looked at him, he saw the same choice. Transform or shatter. He chose to shatter, to create that stability bubble that let us run. And Javi knew from the beginning. His notebooks weren't research, they were instructions. He'd been exposed to something before, something that let him understand. Every mission he'd run with me, he'd been guiding us away from the worst sites, the ones that would have killed us all instantly. His final sacrifice wasn't just pulling those grenades. He threw himself into their dimension completely, created a massive disruption that's still rippling through their network. He's still there, in some form, fighting from the inside. I know because sometimes, in the static of dead radios, I hear his voice. Still here, Sarge, still fighting. Tell my family I love them. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering what the point island, if reality itself is breaking down, what can one person do? First, stay away from the sites. The military will try to recruit you, especially if you're young, especially if you're skilled. Don't go. No amount of money or patriotism is worth what you'll face. Second, if you start seeing the signs, the cracks, the symbols, the impossible angles, don't panic. You're becoming aware of the merger. Most people won't notice until it's too late. Your awareness gives you a choice. Third, find others like you. They're out there, marked but not transformed. Create networks, share information. The governments have given up, but we haven't. Fourth, document everything. Take photos, write accounts, record the changes. When this is over, however, it ends, someone needs to remember what humanity was like before. Finally, when the moment comes, and you'll know when it does, choose carefully. Transformation might seem like survival, but it's not. It's becoming something fundamentally not human. Shattering is death, but it's human death. It preserves something essential, even as it destroys. Yesterday, I picked up a transmission on military frequencies. Not from our military, from theirs. The entities have learned to use our technology. The message was simple. Broadcast in every human language simultaneously. The merger begins in 72 hours. Choose. That was 24 hours ago. The cracks are spreading faster now. I can feel my molecular structure failing, held together by will alone. But I'm going to last long enough to finish this, to upload it everywhere I can, to make sure someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Tank, Evans, and Javi died as heroes in a war nobody knew we were fighting. They chose to remain human, even unto dissolution. Their sacrifice bought us time, bought us knowledge, bought us a chance. Now it's our turn to choose. I know what I'm choosing. When the cracks finally spread too far, when my body can't hold together anymore, it won't stop the merger, but it might slow it down. Might give others more time to understand, to adapt, to find a solution we couldn't. Because that's what humans do. We adapt. We survive. We find a way, even when that way means choosing how we end. This is Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, 75th Ranger Regiment, signing off for the last time. To the families of Tank Miller, Ethan Evans, and Javier Diaz, your sons died as heroes. Not the way the official reports say, but as protectors of reality itself. They faced the impossible and chose to remain human. Their sacrifice matters more than you can know. To anyone from my unit reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't save them. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth earlier. But know that every ranger who's died on these missions has held the line against something far worse than any earthly enemy. To the entities, if you can understand this, we're not your enemy. We're just trying to survive, same as you. There has to be another way. There has to be transcript ends, additional note found in metadata. Sarge, if you're reading this, it means my virus worked and this document survived the purge. It's Javi. I'm not dead, not exactly. I'm somewhere else, somewhere between. The merger can be stopped, not prevented, but controlled. We need 13 anchors, people who've been marked but choose to remain human. You're one. Find the others. The symbols aren't just writing their code, reality's source code. We can rewrite it, but only from the inside. Only by choosing transformation, but maintaining human consciousness. I know it sounds impossible, but impossible is what we do. Rangers lead the way, remember? Even here, especially here. See you on the other side, Sarge. Javi P.S. Tell Maria I kept my promise. I'm still protecting people, just from a different dimension now. End transmission. Document discovered on dark web server the 14th of November 2023. Origin untraceable. Subjects mentioned in document confirmed KIA Iraq 2003 per official military records. Current global electromagnetic anomalies consistent with described phenomena. Document classified ABOVE top secret by Joint International Task Force. Reading this material constitutes violation of National Security Act. Cognitive hazard warning in effect. If you experience dimensional dissociation symptoms after reading, report to nearest military facility immediately. They're coming through, the barriers are failing. Choose wisely.